on some type of CMS, content management system, whether it be WordPress or Joomla? Anybody in their organization or at home? Some hands there. Well, this started as a side project. My day job in Fish Labs is mainly to look at malware analysis and also attacks that occur for phishing. So what I wanted to do is capture some of these automated scripts that are attacking CMS. So mainly just set up a honeypot on my residential account. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll show you how I did that. First, a little background about myself. Roughly 13 years in IT. Like I said, I worked for Fish Labs for about 2 years now, mainly as a malware analyst, threat intelligence. Charleston native, and also served 4 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. Is there any active or prior military in here? Yeah, I thought there'd be some over here at the NSA headquarters for Charleston, so that's cool. My main field interest is web application security and also crimeware analysis, specifically financial crimeware and how you can disrupt that in the cybercrime ecosystem. And of course, I've never been abducted by anyone, so that's pretty sure. Yeah, that I know of, or that I can remember. So what we're going to cover today is, why are these miscreants targeting content management systems? We're going to talk about the setup of the honeypot, and we'll also talk about the findings and the particular vulnerabilities that these automated scripts are trying to attack on a CMS. And lastly, I wanted to just briefly touch on the future work where I want to see this project going and hopefully get some feedback from the local community on how I can proceed with that. And at any time during this presentation, if you have a question about what I'm covering, please feel free to ask it, and I'll try to cover it to the best of my ability. All right, but first a little disclaimer. There are, I believe in full disclosure, so there are some active and malicious links that I'll be showing in this presentation. So please do not click, tweet, and no one should be twerking, especially Chris. I know how much Chris likes to twerk, so.
Can't help myself.
Yeah. All right. So why are miscreants targeting content management systems? And by CMSs, I mean WordPress, Joomla, Type 3, and so on. So with CMS, the saturation of the market, and I'll show you how many CMSs actually exist for web technologies in the world. There are multiple vulnerable systems, and whenever a vulnerable URL or a particular plugin or theme is found in the wild, then that particular vulnerability can be exploited against hundreds, if not thousands, of websites. So these websites are very abundant, so it kind of these miscreants are using that as a toss away, use this for a particular phishing or malware campaign and then move on to the next one. So like I said, using that for malware distro and drive-by downloads and of course phishing attacks. CMS saturation right now, we just took these stats from w3text.com. The gray lines that you see there are for overall web technology. So what that's saying is over 1 in 5 websites right now on the internet are running WordPress. So I was pretty blown away about that. They're just totally crushing the market. So yeah, as you can see there, there's quite a few sites out there that are running CMS. All right, so how are these miscreants locating these particular vulnerable CMS systems? In the underground, the lingo is called dorking, where they find a particular URL plugin, whether that's WordPress or Joomla, the main two that I'm targeting for the honeypot, and they use for Google the search term would be in URL for a particular URL that's covered for a particular vulnerability of that CMS site. So this screen capture here is actually from live traffic from an IRC channel. What this particular miscreant was doing, the OZA handle, he was issuing a command to the bot a PHP IRC bot that exists on a website that's able to scan the internet utilizing these dorking searches in order to find sites that are vulnerable to those particular vulns that you see there, temp SQL, remote file inclusion, local file inclusion. In my day job, we come across these PHP IRC bots fairly often. So what I wanted to do is, set up a system that included multiple vulnerabilities to hopefully not only capture these different PHP shells that are attempted to be uploaded to these CMSs, but also find the goal of where these the IRC servers are contacting these bots here. And we'll talk about those later on. Excuse me, I'll grab some of those here. All right, as I mentioned earlier, compromised CMSs are mainly used for malware distribution. A great example of this is the Patre malware. This is generally spammed out with the Cutwell botnet. It's a malicious downloader. So those encrypted payloads that it's downloading once it runs on a victim's computer generally delivers Zeus P2P, which is financial crimeware that Fish Labs protects its client base against. So I see that fairly often, that these malicious payloads are being hosted on compromised CMS sites. And of course, phishing, I had to include some, being from Fish Labs, I had to include some screenshots of some phishing sites here. So you have your PayPal, of course, multiple email phish, FedEx or shipping, and even dating sites. Wanted to touch on this a little bit. Recently, we've discovered a trend that miscreants will, especially phishers, they'll continuously always go against or try to get financial accounts. But recently, there's been an uptick in trends of trying to get dating sites or career sites like Career Builder or Monster. The main reason being is that these people are trying to facilitate the recruitment of money wheel scams. One of the questions that arise is, are these miscreants building their phishing campaign or the malware campaign from the ground up? Are they going out there and renting VPSs, registering domains? But that's definitely not the case. And this is a graph that was put out by Anti-Phishing Working Group, and they're see in 2013, so they have a pretty large data set of all the phishing that occurs worldwide. As you can see here, the top blue line, almost 70% of last year, all of the phishing attacks occurred on hacked websites. So these miscreants, like I said, they're finding these CMS vulnerable sites, hacking them, or buying shells to access that, and then hosting their phishing campaign in there. So one of the main purposes of setting up this honeypot is finding and trying to get a good grasp of what type of PHP backdoor shells. So I wanted to briefly kind of touch upon that, what these backdoor shells are that these miscreants are using to access a compromised CMS account. So initially, whenever when an exploit occurs, a shell is uploaded that pretty much allows the miscreant full file manager access. And generally, they'll send out an email notification, notifying the miscreant that the shell was executed correctly. We've also seen reverse connection Perl scripts, in that a Perl script will call back and they'll create a backdoor shell from that. And of course, I touched on earlier IRC bots and mailers. And I'll show you what some mailers look like here in a few. All right. So this is a particular screenshot of the backdoor shell. There's quite a few different capabilities that this shell is able to partake in. Full system execution, command execution. It has a SQL client that you're able to actually connect to a SQL database and issue SQL commands from that. Let's see what else is in there. There's a brute force plugin for mainly FTP and cPanel credentials. There's network scanner for network discovery, port scanning, and distributed denial of service as well. When you have a large hosting provider, generally you'll have hundreds of websites that exist on a single IP address. So whenever that request for a particular website is introduced, Apache knows to route that to a particular username on a server. This particular shell, what this would allow is if one of those websites is compromised on a server, this allows a person to laterally move between the other domains on that server. This is called SIM linking. And it's not so much a vulnerability of the Linux operating system. It's mainly due to misconfiguration. So what this particular shell allowed Miscreants to do is SIM link between other domains on the server and grab those configuration files, be the plain text credentials for SQL. Main reason why they do that is they mainly grab the credentials for SQL to other sites to try those same passwords against other resources, be it cPanel, FTP, so on, and even email. Here's an example of a Perl script that we came across. And this was downloaded by a shell, which downloaded other exploits. As you can see down there at the bottom, the system commands, it's issue and wget. I did remove those links because this is an older screenshot. But this particular miscreant was hosting a bunch of local root exploits on his site. So what this Perl script did, it downloaded the local root exploit, tried to run it, and then he issued the who am I command to figure out if it actually worked or not. So that, I thought that was pretty interesting. But that's some of the shells that we come across in the day job, and from what I've seen in the honeypot as well. And again, the IRC bot here. Here's some more live IRC traffic on the left. The wicked, I'm not sure if everyone can see that up at the top. The wicked username issued a command !Jce4. So this particular bot is scanning for the Joomla content editor upload vulnerability that existed at that URL. So the index.php line that you see there, that would be an example of the dork that they're using for that particular vulnerability. So just a couple days ago, the chat transcript that you see there, myself posing as John Boguana, this particular miscreant tried to upload an IRC bot to the honeypot, so I jumped on the server there to see what he was up to, and just out of curiosity, see how much he was selling cPanel for, which is only $7 US, so that was pretty cool. And also the going rate for a hacked website is only $3 US. So that can kind of give you the idea of how many are around. Yeah, Chris?
From your experience, is that rate normally going to be based on like more places like PageRank or visits or popularity of the site?
Not that I've seen. From what I've seen, they don't even usually care about that. It's just whether or not they have access to the site and whether or not, I think the main thing that they look for is whether or not all the PHP functions, whether those are like system and system exec functions, if those are allowed to be executed against the server. Some of your large hosting providers, they'll disable that for security reasons, obviously. But that is one thing that they advertise is that for $1 extra, you can get full system access to a particular server. Yeah, I touched on this earlier, PHP mailers. So we find these every now and then coming phishing and malware distribution sites. All these are just just a form where the miscreant can go to this particular PHP mailer URL, plug in their spam or malware campaign, and then in one of those fields there you can list all the email addresses, and we'll just blindly, in a for loop, just mail them out to everyone in that list. The reason why we like to come across these is, as more of an intelligence gathering piece, we'll stick our own email in there so we get a copy of those transcripts of whenever a miscreant is being, using these as a spam campaign. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the CMS honeypot. So mainly set this up just to acquire shells. So mainly just looking at application layer. I haven't really touched on doing anything on the network layer yet. So who in here, has anyone installed WordPress before? Yeah, a couple people. Yeah, very easy, right? Just unzip and then run, less than 5 minutes. So that's pretty much it. I'll see you later. But I'll show you. From there, I create blog entries with vulnerable URLs, and I'll show you the sources of where I found those vulnerabilities here in a few. From there, capturing all of the get, post, and any type of file that was intended to upload with the PHP file upload parameter. Then we'll also send those shells for deobfuscation. Reason being is that most of these shells are usually base 64 encoded or Jce inflated. So we'll deobfuscate that to see if it's talking to any other type of web server that the miscreant is already compromised. And like I said before, sometimes they include email addresses for notification whenever that successful exploit attempt has occurred. And finally, just mainly for this presentation, I threw the logs of that into Splunk to provide some graphical feedback for this presentation. All right. So like I said, create blog entries that have known and vulnerable PHP shell upload vulnerabilities. Where did I get these? The main one is WP Scan, which is one of my favorite. It's a black hat auditor for WordPress sites. In that it includes close to 2,500 URLs that are vulnerable to the 10th vulnerability. Also browse WordPressExploit.com to look at other types of shell upload vulnerabilities. JuneScan as well. JuneScan, unfortunately it's been kind of deprecated for a while, but it's probably about a year or two since someone's touched it, but a lot of those vulnerabilities still exist in the wild, so that was a cool place to find some for the honeypot. Right. Here's a screenshot of the blog article itself, and as you can see there, I think this one was for Joomla. The particular options there are vulnerable. This was for LFI, vulnerable plugins for Joomla. Right. So since we're creating these fake links on the actual article that aren't pointing to any real file, what we can do is set up an htaccess file that will always return a 200 response. Reason being is that these automated bots that are scanning for these vulnerabilities, they'll probably check to see if it's just a simple 400 return, and then they won't send anything. So we'll just say, every request that you send that doesn't exist, go ahead and send 200 for that. And we'll redirect that down at the bottom to our custom 404.php page. And I'll show you what I did to set that up too. So the 404.php contains, let's go ahead and capture every get and post parameter, and of course any file that's attempted to be uploaded. Also want to capture, the PHP server variable, which contains quite a few information on the client request that's being sent to the server. And finally, we'll send the shell upload attempts to unphp.net for deobfuscation, and then also email the alert. Wanted to give a little plug to my buddy, fellow cybersecurity researcher over at PHP. He's been very helpful in this endeavor. It's a free API for PHP deops. Not only do they have a web client where you can post in the obfuscated code for deobfuscation for their website, but they also offer a free API. One of the cool things that we recently worked on with this project is that throughout the day you can receive a daily report with all the URLs and email addresses that have been deobfuscated in code. So that can be some pretty cool threat intel that you will be able to use in real world action. Sample email alert. This one's for the, I know it's probably hard to read that, sorry, but this is for the Joomla content editor upload vulnerability. So you can see here I'm dumping the entire post data field, the get data field, and the server data field, and also sending that back, the particular shell that was attempted to be uploaded, sending that to unphp.net, which I included a URL there for. Mainly just set up a Gmail address for those email notifications and being able to utilize that search API as well to do some reporting on that. So what could we do with some of these findings? Well, first and foremost, being a researcher myself, is disrupt the cybercrime ecosystem. Either take down these particular shells that or these hacking groups that are trying to attempt to break into websites, or we can let it run its course and patch those and try to get as much intelligence as we can out of that. And my personal favorite, of course, is whenever we discover those IRC botnets and going into the chat room and messing with them. Out of all this data, I think too would be some pretty cool IP reputation data from some of the services that I've used. Just checking it against some of the major threat intel IP reputation databases. They didn't have any info on the particular IP addresses that I have been seeing in this honeypot. Finally, the antivirus companies, of course, everyone likes to beat those up, but the malicious PHP hits are very low for antivirus signatures, and I'll show you some virus tool results from that as well. Okay. So start going over the findings here. I started running this honeypot at home December 19th. The uptime's roughly 135 days. I had to move in there. So apparently, if you're on Comcast or moving to Comcast, you have to notify them a full year ahead of time in order to have a hot connection whenever you arrive. So that was cool. I hope no one's from Comcast. Please don't cap me. So yeah, a little over 7,000 unique PHP shells sent to unphp.net for the obfuscation. A little over 6,000 WordPress template attempts, 46 a day, and a pretty high number of Joomla content editor upload attempts, about 123.
Paul? Sir, were you doing anything to, was it a matter of you just basically created the blog and put the vulnerabilities in it and just kind of put it out there in the wind? Or did you actually advertise it anywhere? Or were these all organic?
Yeah, good question. There are, without knowing too much about how WordPress handles SEO, but how that occurs there. Remember during the setup is should you allow search engines to index this page? So there's some type of technology that's unfortunately I haven't studied too much into that, but whenever that occurs or whenever you make a post, I think that's advertised somehow to the search engine providers, and they automatically send a crawl request to your site. That being said, on some of them, I did look at like Google Webmaster Tools where you can submit a URL. So I did do that for a few of them as well.
So it would be safe to say that basically anybody, by setting up a WordPress site, clicking the box to allow it to be indexed,
right.
If it was inherently vulnerable, then you would likely see those same types of results.
Absolutely.
Generally not. You're going to have to either register it or you're going to have to have a link from a site that's already been crawled.
I see.
So the clicking of that box is more of a robot-style text type of action. Just what you want to search for. It's not not necessarily going to advertise them out, so you do need to either link to it from something that is being crawled or requested.
When you register the site though, who is, they're gonna find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is true.
I was gonna say, they crawl through his records like crazy, so, or did you register the URL or the domain you're gonna get from?
Or if you're on an IP that's already
Shared IP.
Yeah.
By the way, real quick aside, the Charleston-ISSA website is WordPress, so nobody can hear us. I don't need to be like masking all of that.
I want to take a look to see if any WP scan user agents come across.
We'll be watching.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that, I initially set this honeypot up for is to capture shell upload attempts. One thing that I did not take into account is the sheer number of brute force attempts against the WordPress administrator page. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So some of the Joomla vulnerabilities that I listed on there as well. Not only do they have shell upload, but they also had LFI and RFI, so I saw a lot of those exploit types. And I'm currently going back and taking a look at all the different SQL injection attacks that CMS is, and trying to include those in the blog articles for capture as well. So yeah, WordPress admin brute force. Invalid WordPress login attempts on wp-login.php is the main WordPress admin URL there. Someone in Turkey just didn't like my site, apparently. That actually occurred from probably a single IP address that did a true brute force as opposed to a dictionary attack. One thing I did do for about a month is I captured all the post parameters for the WP login page. And what I saw is that most of these are just common username password lists, usually less than 100 attempts per IP. So reason to believe that there's not some type of malware out there that's probably scanning these particular sites. So yeah, over 125,000 total invalid login attempts, roughly 920 a day. One question that I wanted to answer for myself is, once these miscreants gain access through a WordPress administrator login screen, how are they utilizing that to actually turn that into, to monetize that, to sell that site? So one thing I looked into is utilizing the WordPress admin to upload a shell. Unfortunately, fortunately for white hats, but unfortunately for black hats, the WordPress admin does not allow direct PHP upload through its file manager. So there's a couple tricks that you have to do. You can either edit the WordPress theme or upload the theme plugin, a valid theme or plugin with an embedded shell. And I'll show you how it works. For each WordPress theme, there's a 404.php template for that theme. So what we've seen is that these miscreants are editing that template, and that can be simply accessed at the something WP content folder, 404.php. The second way that they're doing it is downloading a valid theme or plugin from WordPress.org. They unzip that, toss in their PHP shell, rezip it, upload it to the WordPress site, and it's going to be in a known directory where they uploaded that thing. Joomla admin actually makes this a little bit easier for the black hats. So the same as WordPress theme, except we can also change the upload restrictions. The first method is editing the Joomla templates directly through the Joomla admin, or allow PHP extension uploads. This is done in system global configuration media settings, and then the add PHP as legal extension, and you also want to disable the restrictive uploads. So now the PHP shells can be uploaded directly through Joomla admin and the media manager. Wanted to touch on local file inclusion real quick. Not going to bore you to death with that. There's quite a few resources on the internet that contain LFI. But mainly what I wanted to get at is to see which Joomla components are being attacked the most, and what's the particular type of LFI that they're trying to do to upload a backdoor shell. And most of these, as you'll see from my findings, they always contain a directory traversal attempt. Mainly three ways how a miscreant is using LFIs to upload a backdoor PHP shell. The first one being the proc self-environ file. This includes pretty much all user resources for a given connection whenever a client requests a particular site. This also includes the user agent. One thing being is that the user agent can be controlled from the client that's being requested a website. So in this curl example here, send the user agent just echoing pwn against a particular page in our previous example for the proc self-environ file. Secondly is anonymous FTP injection. So the miscreant would need to know if the anonymous FTP was allowed to be uploaded. The miscreant would need to know the direct file server location for that file that they uploaded, and then they can use that instead of the proc self-environ file for PHP injection. Finally, error log injection. Whenever this occurs, the miscreant usually throws just a bad request, a file, a non-existent file that includes PHP within the URL itself. And if they know the location of that error log, whether or not it's the default var log, error log for Apache, or sometimes PHP also includes an error underscore log in the same directory for the PHP file that errored out. So I'm going to talk about some of the findings here from the honeypot LFI instance itself. And these are all occurring from Joomla LFI vulnerabilities. So you can see the top one here, com_vir_frm. It's the main one that was being targeted there, with a little over, 78 attempts. As you can see, the directory traversal all the way back up to proc self-environ for that LFI exploit to occur. Roughly 9 hits a day for LFI on those. We'll talk about the 10th vulnerability, getting into the main two vulnerabilities that I captured from this honeypot. This was an image resize utility, and the reason why this is so prevalent is that the 10th utility itself has been included in thousands of different plugins and themes for WordPress that are able to be downloaded. And unfortunately, it was a really nasty remote file include to shell upload vulnerability that was introduced all prior to version 1.3.4. Although this was publicly disclosed in August of 2011, there's still thousands of sites on the internet that are still vulnerable to this particular vulnerability. Where do you get these from? Like I mentioned earlier, WP Scan, probably one of the coolest tools ever written. So the images are resized with this GET request, usually site.com and WP content theme 10phone.php. The source parameter for the GET request would include external URLs that include an image that's downloaded to the cache directory. So what checks are being implemented in the vulnerable versions of 10phone that we can exploit? There's actually only two. There's an allowed external domains check. So the first one, all of these allowed sites that were originally placed, Flickr, Blogger, Image.YouTube, the check that they imposed for that, if you include those strings, Flickr.com, Blogger.com, as a subdomain, then it passes that check. So we got the first one bypassed, right? The second check that it uses is the image MIME type, all right? One way to fool this is that you can take the first 10, 16 characters of a file, of a particular GIF or image file, and prepend that to your PHP script, and it'll pass that check. So that was the second check to bypass that. So these miscreants are setting up fake drops. And the example right here usually a hacked website, misc.local, would be created a subdomain off of that site for one of the allowed site checks, blocker.com. And the add PHP shell with GIF headers. I called that out there, so you can see up at the top there the GIF header file. Some of those printers not printing, or some of the characters not printing because of the quotation marks there, or the question marks. And you can see that's actually first 20 characters of an image for a GIF, and then from there, actually including PHP code. Finally, the miscreant sets up an htaccess file on the subdomain that they created, in this example, blogger.com. Since you don't want any of that PHP to actually render on the server, just receive it down or send it down as a text file. They're disabling the PHP flag itself. Any questions so far? Smart crowd. All right, go over some of the findings here. Don't know what's going on with France, but quite a few hits from France. And keep in mind, a lot of this geolocation stuff, I used the Maxmine database, which isn't the best. It does not, although sometimes it'll come back and say that this occurred from an anonymous proxy. There could be, most of these hits are occurring from Tor exit nodes or VPNs. Top 10 thumb drops. I want to go over these top 10 frequently used drops. These are live 10 thumb vulnerable PHP drops that miscreants are using. Unfortunately, my Splunk didn't take into account that URL encoding is being used on some of those URLs, so you might see a couple of them twice if you do the URL encoding. But the main one, as you can see here, a little over 1,800 attempts from this one 10 thumb file out there on the internet. So I wanted to dive down and take a look at that. So grab the shell and just toss it up on a web server to see not only to analyze the PHP code, grab a screenshot there for you. It's actually a full-fledged shell. As you've seen previously in the other shells, up at the top there in the menu items, you have a full SQL client. Of course, it has a file manager. There's a brute force module for it, and of course, system execution and file loader. Wanted to, here comes VirusTotal. So I wanted to see, how do VirusTotal results are actually seeing this? All these are probably, more than likely occurring on Linux systems, and there might not be antivirus running. Most large server hosting providers are running antivirus. Just wanted to see what this looked like. So this particular drop, as long as it's been out, the same drop was first seen over 2 years ago. So the top block there was the first analysis that VirusTotal did when one of 42 antivirus signatures hit. The second one that I ran was a couple days, or yesterday, only 5. So you can see the issue with that, with hosting providers. Even if they are running some type of antivirus software, these are not popping for any type of malicious PHP. That is one thing that I hope to incorporate into the honeypot, by the way, is hopefully to utilize VirusTotal's API to give them a little bit more data on these malicious backdoors. Let's talk a little bit about that top drop that we saw earlier, the 1,800 number one attempts. So the subdomain blogger.com points to the same base IP address as the site pkmd.pl, which took a look at that site. It's running multiple Joomla and PHP bulletin board installs, which could, suggest that that was the original attack vector that the miscreants broke in on. The way that they're able to set up that subdomain, generally what we've seen whenever a miscreant breaks into a website, they'll take a look at credentials that are stored in plain text for these CMS configuration files, and they'll try those same credentials against other services. So my guess with this one would be is that the miscreants broke in and grabbed the database credentials and tried those against the cPanel, and were able to set up that subdomain for this particular attack. All right. The next big one is the Jce Vulnerability that I found, or that the honeypot has been targeted against, so I want to go over that. It's a media manager. What you see is what you get editor for users. It provides features like Microsoft Office and Word for publishing articles on Joomla. Vulnerable versions of Jce are less than 2.0.10, and like I said earlier, the particular Google dork to find this vulnerable extension is com_Jce. This was disclosed in August of 2011, but just like TimThumb, it's still out there. Original PHP and Perl proof of concept, if you want to take a look at that. The reason why I point this out, you'll see this in my findings here in a little bit. And also note Metasploit actually has a module for this. So, any Metasploit fans in here? Yeah, see some heads bob. Screenshot of the original PHP rendered, obviously, of the Joomla extension remote file upload. Let's go over the findings. Coming from Mexico, almost 10,000 hits just from Mexico alone. South Korea, no surprise there, one of the best nations as far as connection or connectivity is concerned. So see a lot of compromised traffic coming out of South Korea. I thought this was pretty interesting. The user agents that are being used that this honeypot captured, as you can see, almost 80%, I think, is for the particular user agent that you see down at the bottom there. Oh, 90% actually. So yeah, close to 8,500 attempts using that user agent. And where have you seen that user agent before? In the original POC that was published in 2011. So this kind of suggests that some script kidders are probably just grabbing that and blindly finding ridiculous sites, or also utilizing that same code for their automated app scripts. All right. So some of y'all may be asking, great, yeah, these vulnerabilities have been publicly disclosed, going on 4 years now. So one thing I wanted to prove that the system can handle is a new exploit that's been published. So this particular one is a shell upload vulnerability for the kid-do or kiddo theme for WordPress. This was disclosed February 13th of this year. So of course I created my article, just threw up some random stuff, random text there, and of course in the vulnerable URL that you see down here at the bottom for this particular WordPress thing. And the first one, probably not even 2 days after I did it, received the first shell attempt, and the second one occurred probably about a week later. Although they were both named the same, they had different MD5s, but they both had the same authentication password. So one thing I wanted to show you, I thought the shell was pretty interesting. It tries to mimic a 404 error page, so I guess if a particular hosting provider was made aware of this, he might take a look at that URL and say, oh, there's nothing there. But if you take a look at the HTML source, there was actually a hidden input field for the password. So I thought that was pretty cool of the Miscreant. I could have changed the password itself, but I threw it up on cachingcrack.co.uk and grabbed the MD5 crack for that, and that was K4, whatever that K4 string is there. And once you log into that, that's the full shell that comes up. So this particular shell, just like the other ones, has some other pretty cool features in there as well. There's an LFI plugin that I've yet to play with. I might have to go back and look at that one. There's of course a SQL client in there as well. So let's talk about where I kind of like to take this project. I'd really like to allow for full system compromise, and I know it's kind of crazy, but what I'd really like to do is tie these particular exploit attempts together and see what these miscreants are using the system for after exploitation, trying to tie that into whether that's phishing or malware distribution. Recently, there was a pretty cool article on sysdig.org. It's this new server monitoring utility that pretty much allows you to capture anything, any changes that occur on a system. So you might want to check that out. What this particular researcher did, he used sysdig, and he created about, I think about 10 different VPSs out in the cloud, different cloud service managers or cloud service providers. And so what he did, he just set the root password as password and used sysdig to kind of capture that. There's some pretty cool results that you see from that bit of research that he did. Finally, I want to get into more of the network IPS side. Not only just from looking at live traffic that comes across the wire, but also comparing different web application firewalls. I think that would be pretty cool to compare those across the board to see what type of attacks are able to be skirted around these application firewalls. And finally, trying to develop some type of better log analysis using some type of SIEM solution for that. And of course, add more CMS vulnerable links. So if anyone has any suggestions on how I might be able to do that, I'd love to hear from you. So that pretty much ends the presentation. Does anyone have any questions or input at this time?
Question.
Sir?
If you do go forward with the full exploitation and monitoring, how do you deal with the legal and ethical ramifications of what if they are using your system too?
What are those exactly?
So if you're...
I'm just messing with you. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. As a cybersecurity researcher in the past, when I have set up VPSs, I do generally try to reach out to their support team or try to utilize relationships that I have had with previous employers that are providing these services, and try to just give them a heads up, hey, I'm a cybersecurity researcher, don't arrest me, it's cool. So that's how I generally approach it. In the event that most abuse departments, they're not just going to toss their name over to the FBI. They're going to allow you the opportunity to clean up your system, to patch it, and whatnot from there. But that's definitely a concern.
Call.
Sir?
Is there so if I wanted to replicate your work at home or set up something like this somewhere myself, is there a guide or will there be a guide somewhere that tells how to recreate some of what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention that earlier. Any of the code that I've written, I was want to post that up on GitHub or some code sharing site. So if anyone's interested in that, just let me know and I can get that to you.
And we'll post the slides from this afterwards along with the video, and if you'll give us the link, we'll make sure that's there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you doing, or do you see any need for any kind of honeypot detection avoidance?
Honeypot
Detection
avoidance.
So like you're approving every single bad request. I mean, is there a possible way where you can text that or something?
Yeah, well, from most of the scripts that I was trying to capture, going back to, I have seen code where they look to see, they're mainly only just checking for the 200 to 400 response. Right? So as long as that exists, they don't really care whether or not what server they're hitting. Because they're running these from compromised servers themselves. It's not a targeted attack. So it's one thing that I really haven't seen is honeypot avoidance. Good question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So, if
if I understand correctly, what they're doing is they're uploading the shell to the compromised server, and then they access that shell and use all those capabilities.
Just
that are
different
built in.
functions, yes. So I don't know if, that's one thing that I would like to figure out with full system compromise, right? Is allowing them to access that. So is the particular group that's conducting these automated attacks and uploading shells, are they then using that shell to access that to conduct their cybercrime initiative, or are they selling that off to a third party? So I think that would be a pretty cool question to answer. Yes, sir.
FTP is inherently open for clear text password
Yes.
scanning. So is that the one of the conduits to getting data onto your system and getting it affected? Or would you have a FTP instance that you're using over the internet that can be they can listen and identify as
That's a good
files?
point. Yeah, that's a good point. No, that's solely right now, since I haven't allowed for full system compromise. I don't have FTP set up, or I'm not monitoring that. I don't have it open. But that would be one cool thing to tie those loose ends together, and instead of speculating. Once CMS is compromised, how are they using those credentials to gain access to there? Yeah, so hopefully that answers. Yes, sir.
These attackers, do they try to be, I guess, do some kind of stealth type of attack so they go undetected?
The only thing that I saw,
Or anything like that?
since these attacks are occurring from already compromised resources, generally the only thing that I've seen is that they'll try to URL encode the shells that they upload, since they can't utilize full encryption like you could with some of the PHP encryption standards that are out there, like maybe it doesn't ring a bell right now, but they're not encrypting these. They're only doing obfuscation for that. So that's pretty much the only way that they're trying to hide your tracks. These aren't nation state actors. Anyone that's conducting phishing attacks are. Malware you're starting to get, from what I've seen, it's a little bit higher end of the deal, but even then, these attackers aren't really caring about the traffic that they're sending out.
So is the PHP shell a single PHP file?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, it's a single PHP file that's uploaded. Yes.
Could any of these, I'm assuming some of these could be called like MD5, like network monitoring MD5 hashes and things like that, that you'll see these PHP files go across the wire. Even if they're obfuscated, you should be able to do like capture that and hash it and run that against some known.
Right, yeah. I mean, you would think, but what are those mainly based on? Antivirus signatures, right? So, as I showed you earlier, I don't think they're being caught as much because we wouldn't see them that prevalent in a while. But yeah, if you're doing some type of MD5, you mean like on the actual gateway?
Yeah, I'm talking about like Bro analysis or something like that, using Bro to pull out file, to do calculations in MD5s on every file that goes across.
Yeah,
Something
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these attacks, especially with the LFI, I mean, there shouldn't be any application firewall that allows proc self-environment. So a lot of these attacks are going to be blocked straight from the email with any type of application firewall.
One more question. Once they get this, what is their end result other than doing phishing or whatever? Are they using these sites to host malware or to launch some larger scale attack, or is this simply just for resale, or what?
Right.
What is the goal for that? What are they trying to use these sites for after they compromise them?
Yeah, I would say predominantly phishing and mostly malware distribution. But I would have to suggest it's probably for resale. So they have, they get like a whole bunch of different sites that are vulnerable, and they'll sell that as a package. $3 a site, 100 sites, and already have a shell up on these sites, and this is how you access it.
So that's the initial attack. So you're saying that those folks that
so I only capture the initial load payloads. But what we've seen in phishing and malware distribution, these the shells and the mailers and the IRC bots exist on those sites that are already hosting these payloads. So, I think it's a pretty fair assumption that these shells are being used to facilitate cybercrime.
What's the linkage, what's the end goal that you're seeing? In fact, this is probably more of your day channel. What's the linkage to what they're going after? Is it financial? Is it distributing ransomware? What's the dominant use of this?
Mainly financial. With the cybercrime community, as a whole, as you take a look at the snapshot from that right now, compared to 10 years ago when it was just all shits and giggles. For nowadays, for actors to do that, it's usually financial. Yes, sir.
Wouldn't the checking MD5s, wouldn't that be ineffective since you showed on your newer vulnerability, you got the chance to show with different MD5s in just a few days?
Yeah,
MD5s, the number of collisions and all it takes is adding a character, you've got to do MD5s.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can pull out URL strings in too, the rankings, PHP,
MD5s are kind of, you can do fuzzy matching though, which is fuzzy.
Yes, sir.
So, one of the things I got out of this was that, if you're gonna run a content management system like this, you want to not use the same password in your WP configs as you do, against your cPanel, right? What other practices would you recommend, for folks who are running content management systems like this, to help protect themselves? Obviously, automatic updates with your version of WordPress, you can have to do the updates for you. But
Right.
what are some of the probably the non-standard things you would recommend?
Changing, going back to WordPress admin brute force, I would change the default administrator username. You've seen that, although it is fairly easy to get the username, because you can actually scrape that from the blog entry articles themselves. But most, drive-by brute force attempts are just going to assume that the WordPress admin username is admin. So that's one thing that I would do. Choosing a hosting provider too that has very responsive support and abuse department. I can give you some suggestions on that.
I can give you one to avoid.
Yeah, we all have our favorites on there too.
What about things like WordFence? You see any effectiveness in
I'm sorry,
like
what was
plugins, like security plugins? WordFence is one where it looks for like brute force attempts against username and blocks an IP address automatically based on.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have seen some of those out in the wild, but haven't had time to play with them yet. I think the other one that I wanted to maybe throw some attacks against is security. They also put out a plugin. There's also Better WP Security, is another brute force attack blocker. So yeah, there's quite a few out there, and I think this particular system, if you have those plugins installed, it would be pretty cool to compare the results and see what they're actually preventing access to. Yes, sir.
Have you seen that any of these PHP shells are doing any reach back of any sort? So are they feeding back periodically to notify the server that they're still active, or are they just predominantly lying dormant? Yeah,
that's a good point. So in some of the PHP shells, whenever those are uploaded, some of the miscreants are including hacking scripts that are downloading Perl modules, if that's for local root exploits, or if they're for actual reverse shell connections back using Perl for those. So I have seen that. I've seen utilizing the mail function call in PHP to send an email to notify the person that a successful shell exploits occurred. So yeah, that is one cool thing, and that's mainly the reason why I mentioned on php.net is that it's going to deobfuscate those shells and pull those URLs and email addresses out automatically, and you can get a daily report on that to take a look at the findings. Yes, sir.
Whenever the attackers attempt their attack and actually are successful, can't you just put something in there in order for them to actually be tricked into downloading something that would end up damaging them in return?
That's one thing that we have been kind of playing with. I have kind of messed around with the browser exploitation framework, Beef, as it is. Metasploit also offers a cross-site scripting, what do you call it, like a plugin that you're able to get information out of a browser. So that's another intelligence gathering potential that you can use right there as well. That'd be really cool to see, you know, is it an automated script that's accessing that vulnerable shell, or is it actual, you know, someone that is using Chrome with no script installed or something like that. So it would be pretty cool to find out those findings from post-exploitation. That's a good question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Remember Kevin Johnson at all at Sands?
Kevin Johnson?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with him.
He's one of the Sands instructors for GWAP.
Oh, cool.
Hey, we're at Sands.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Beef is pretty cool. There's a lot of cool things in it. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for having me out. I was really interested not only to show you what I've been kind of working on in my place on, but also to meet some of the